Hi everyone, welcome to October and continuation of our colors of autumn. Obviously in September we made the horse chestnut or conker or buckeye, depending where you live, and obviously in the shell, out of the shell, and the beautiful leaves to go with it. We made obviously a dried poppy seed head, which is going to look really nice in the arrangement with that sort of dried look to it. Then we went on to the Chinese lantern, the lanterns and the leaves, and then finished up obviously with the autumn cosmos in the yellowy color. Remember, that can be made in many color combinations, but to tie in with our whole colors of autumn theme. This month we're going to be starting off in this first of two parts. We're going to be making rose hips, and also we're going to be making a couple of different types of berries. And then we will move on to the end two parts of obviously October with making some ornamental grasses, like for example quaking grass, wild oats, also some honesty, and also like a little small miniature variety of bulrush, which is like what we call cat's tails, and that sort of brown spiky looks really nice in the arrangement. And then obviously on the last episode in October, will put in our wiring our arrangement together and then put in a suitable container like your picture I showed you, or obviously a jug or a tall vase. So let's get started. So here you can see these are rose hips. Now rose hips, obviously different varieties of roses have different colored hips. Most of them are sort of a reddy orangey color, but there are also others, as you will see. And also the shape of the rose hip varies a lot depending on the variety of the rose. So these are sort of when we typically think of like rose hips, you think of the red rose hips. Here you can see this almost like a purple colored one, and you can see the shape of them varies. Like this is very much almost like a ball with a slight cone. This is more like oval, like a pumpkin shape. You can see here, these are sort of from wild roses, which you know about, for example, landscape roses, and you see they're more of a sort of an oval shape, all right? And you can see these are obviously, once the calyx dies off, this is really what is left of it. But here you can see this is a really pretty like green and almost blush colored one. Here's a yellowy colored one. Again, you can see the purple one. If you just do a search on rose hip, this looks like almost a little apple. And you can see is obviously green, and then it's ripening off and changing color. And when the calyx withers, the calyx obviously which is on the rose is going to wither as obviously eventually attaches away from the actual hip. So that shows some of the rose hips. And as far as berries, you know, there are lots of different berries that we can use in the autumn time. So obviously we think of that sort of palette of the oranges and reds and yellows and burgundies and colors. Obviously last year in the Flower Pro Members Club, we did some berries in there. So obviously that will be the things that you can use, like Hypericum, for example, is a very popular autumn berry. So we're going to do a couple of different types of berries. So we can one of them freehand, like a simple berry, and then one in the mold, actually in the winter foliage mold, using the yew berry cavity. But again, you can see the colors of the berries vary a lot. And obviously berries are very useful to use in an arrangement. So when we are making berries, and also the rose hip, we're going to be working with, obviously working from a checklist. So let's get started. So we're going to start off with rose hips. Now, the rose hip is this part here. It's the ovary. So when we make our, calyx, we put the calyx on, and using this particular one was done in obviously Flower Pro Calyx Trio. Then this is the sort of ovary, which goes on here. Now, when the rose dies off, all right, so as I said, of course, depending on the variety of rose, but when the rose dies off, basically all of the sort of the rose, the calyx becomes sort of withered, and that's the brown part here. But this ovary becomes swollen because basically it's impregnated with the seeds. And that is actually used, the dried rose hips are used for potpourri, for example. Also, they extract from there like rose hip syrup, and obviously is used in teas and other things as well. So it's obviously but this becomes quite big really compared to how it is initially as a small green seed. But obviously as it ripens and matures, just like being pregnant, it obviously swells up and it changes color. And so as I showed you in the previous photographs, they vary in color from orangey red, come burgundies, the black color one, oranges, and sort of blush color. So there are lots of variations on the rose. Now when we make the rose hips, we're going to make this is what the rose hips we're going to make. These haven't been colored yet, all right, but this is sort of how the rose hip grows. And of course, as it starts to die off, and then of course you can have then hips at the finish of the autumn time, which have no, this top part all detaches, and it's just going to be that red hip like I showed you in the photographs. And these are obviously when they're colored, and of course we're going to add gloss to the piece as well. Now in your directions, all right, so in the directions here for the rose hips, it says for the stamens, and we're going to make 3 rose hips. All right, we're going to use some pale yellow thread. So in your checklist, this is just pale yellow thread. Now, of course, you could use, for example, a creamy color, or you could use a pale brown, because we're going to dust this brown. But if you actually took brown thread, it would almost look a little bit too solid a brown. So I like usually using just a pale yellow. And because we've used this in quite a few projects before, this is something that you have probably already. So anyway, we're going to take the scraper. So we're going to take our flexi scraper, and we're just going to go around the end of this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Sorry, a bit noisy. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 60. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 70. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Now you're gonna. This will yield two centers. All right. And of course you'll need to then repeat this to do another one. And of course you can just make 2 more and then keep 1 for future. All right. So we're gonna just take that. So once we've got the thread. So we remove, and in your checklist, it's got 3 half length. I'm just going to show you 2 centers. It's going to request 3 third length 28 gauge wires. These are green wires. All right, and you're just going to slide this off of the here. All right, if you've got sort of an excess thread, you can just trim that away. All right, and then you're going to take your thread here. You're going to go through there. You're just going to twist it firmly through one end of the loop. And you do the same. Now, because we're going to cut these quite short, you can also even just do that round 2 fingers as well. You won't use as much thread. But it's just I found usually in classes now with a flexi scraper, it just makes it easier to get a consistent size and things, because obviously everybody's fingers are different, and we've obviously this is based on if you were making longer stamens, but you could just go around 2 fingers and do the same thing, and it'll make a shorter loop. Anyway, once you get there, so we're going to thread the wire through and then you cut in half. All right, so what you're going to do is just going to use your scissors. All right, so you cut that in half, and then we're going to use some 1/4 width floral tape. We're going to be using in your checklist 1/4 width green tape, 1/2 width green tape, and later on for the berries 1/4 width brown and 1/2 width brown. All right, so stretch your tape there, and you're going to just take your floral tape and just tape the very base of this. All right, so you see I'm just putting a tape around the very base of this, so this just holds it all together. Remember, go around, just tape down just a little way. All right. And then what we're going to do is going to cut these. So then we're going to cut to 6 millimeters or 1/4 inch long, because they want to be quite short. As you can see on the finished one here, they're going to sort of sit in the middle there. All right. Now this would be like, for example, on our rose that we made that has the stamens in, obviously say the Texas yellow rose of Texas, the Harrison's yellow. Obviously when this dies, this will be like the stamens that we made in yellow. Okay, because obviously they dry. And so you're going to take these, and you're going to make these 1/4 inch long, all right, which is approximately about 6 millimeters, all right? So this is sort of where it's going to be easy to do it in inches. Of course, you can cut into a small container like this, all right? So that you can get 1/4 inch long. So very much like the technique we'd use for a cherry blossom or things, but obviously a little fuller. All right, so that's going to be, so of course you'd repeat that, making just 1 more. And remember, as I said, if you want to go around your fingers, because you won't use those obviously, but you're not really wasting a lot of thread. So just get rid of the thread. And what we're then going to do is, next step, once you've made the 3 of those, we're going to, then it says dust all over chocolate dust and foliage green in the center. So we're going to use some chocolate dust. All right, so I'm going to use a little bit of chocolate dust and also some foliage dust, foliage green. All right, so what I'm going to do is going to use a little bit of the chocolate dust here. And I'm going to just sort of dust that all over brown. And it's easy to do this just sort of before you sort of really fluff it out. All right, so I'm going to put some brown onto there. And then once you've got the brown onto there, and I said, you know, though you could use brown thread, it's going to look almost like too solid a brown, but you could use a sort of a beige color, creamy colored thread as well, but the pale yellow seemed to work well. And then we're just going to fluff that out like you would making like a cherry blossom center. So I'm just going to use the brush for that. So I'm just going to strip. And then what I would do is take a little bit of foliage green. And with a little bit of foliage green, we're going to dust that into the center. So just have a little bit of green right in the center there. All right, so that will be the first step. So you're going to prepare obviously the three of these. All right. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to actually create the calyx. Now the calyx is very fragile, and so especially if you're using traditional flower paste, you know, if you imagine if you just use like a cutter or just sort of press paste into a mold and put it on, it's going to make it very fragile. So these are actually all wired. They have a wire through each of these little calyxes. So what that means is going to make it a much stronger. Of course, if you're working with air drying clay or flexi paste, it's not the same issue because it's obviously a lot more flexible. But with traditional flower paste, that would be very, very easy to break, all right? And so we're going to do these wires. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to now move on to the calyx, all right? We're going to make the calyxes like 15 little calyxes. Then we're going to attach them to the stamens in a minute. And then we will be, as I said, going on to the next stage. But before we do that, we're just going to prepare the wire, all right? So once we've got that, we're going to tape onto a half length 24 gauge wire using half width green floral tape and add 2 more wires. So in your checklist, there are 9 half length 24 gauge green or white wires. And we're going to use half width floral tape now. So we can change out to half width floral tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the floral tape just at the very sort of base there where that little piece meets. And just going to literally tape that on. All right. So tape that on, and then you're going to add 2 extra wires. So just put 2 extra wires there and then just tape down. Just obviously level that up. So we've got a total of 3 24 gauge wires. You can trim off that end one because obviously the one of them is going to be a little bit, and that will be sort of how you get the end on. So on quite a strong wire because obviously we've got a number 9 small to make the hip. So show you that again. So we're going to just place the wire up against the base there. And we're going to use, remember, so 1/4 width tape when you attach the wire around the thread, and then you're going to just sort of tape that. And as soon as you start taping, you can just take the 2 extra wires here. And with these 2 extra wires here, we're going to start taping down. Okay, and then when you get down towards the bottom there, you can just trim off that. So we just even that up. These are going to be put onto a longer branch. Remember, most of the components, obviously, last month when we did the Autumn Cosmos, and of course also when we did the Chinese lantern, and obviously some of the other things, we've got them on longish wires because we want height in the type of arrangement we're doing. But anyway, of course, this could be done on a shorter wire if you're making them in a smaller cake. So you're going to prepare your three centers like this. And as I said, next we're going to move on to the calyx. So for the calyx, we have in your checklist, these are 30 gauge white wires, right? They have to be white here. And what you're going to do is you're going to just use some scissors or kitchen shears, because they're fine wires, cut them in half. And then what you're going to do is you're going to cut each half into 3. All right. So what that's going to do is actually going to give you 18 wires. Now we actually only use 15 of the 18, but this is just easier to cut this like this. All right. And like I've shown you before, if you have a little magnet, just put those on a magnet. That keeps them organized and on your table, easier to see as well. And those are your wires ready. Now what we're going to do is in this project, we're going to recycle actually some of the paste left from September. So this is the paste left over from the conker, all right, the buckeye. And so what we're going to do is you're going to just take the paste that we use. This is where we encase the seed of the conker. You know, it's the cream and green paste that we had. So you're just going to mix that, just a piece of that together. So what you're doing is you're just making it a paler green, all right? So it's actually cream and green. And of course it was pale green to start off with. So you get that. So just use some of that paste that's left over from that project, all right? And then what we're going to do is take a number 7 small of cream pale green. And of course, if you didn't make your conker, if you haven't made your horse chestnut, you could just use a little bit of cream and a little bit of green. But you just want a sort of a pale green, okay? And you want a number 7 small. So this wants to be a number 7 that goes through the hole. All right, so just go through the hole. So number 7 small, there we go. All right, and that's what we're going to be using for the piece. Now what we're going to do is just want to condition this, so just work a little bit of vegetable fat into that. Remember, with your air drying clay and also your flexi paste, if it feels a little tight or a little dry, you can just dip it in water as well. And even with flexi, even with air drying clay, you can still use a little bit of the vegetable shortening. All right, but you just want to condition the whole lot. And using your little flexi scraper, we're going to roll this into a sausage. Remember, this is just a good way to get it a regular. Doesn't matter how long it is, although it needs to be this sort of same approximate diameter. Using a knife or scissors, what we're going to do is going to cut this into quarters. All right, and then we're going to, so once we've done that, roll into a sausage, cut into 4, and then each piece into 4 again, because this will give us 16 pieces, all right? So then you're just gonna basically cut this. It doesn't matter if they vary a little bit, but you're just gonna cut these into quarters. We're gonna be using a very similar technique with the berry. But just like on some of the projects like the boxwood, and then obviously when we did the fragrant herbs, you know, the lavender and rosemary, this is just a much sort of quicker way. When we're doing certain projects, you need a lot of the same size to measure that off, all right? So anyway, there's your pieces there. I'm going to just put them under a little pot here. So that will stop them drying. Just going to cover that over. All right. So we're going to, then once we've done that, so you only will need 15 of the 16 pieces, all right? Because remember, we need calyx is 5 calyx is 5 parts, so you'll have some wires over and you have 1 piece of paste over, okay? But anyway, so we're gonna, So we're going to dip the wire into glue and press into the ball of paste so the wire comes out together, and like making the rosemary or lavender or the, for example, some of the other juniper leaves and things like that. And then roll into a thin sausage with point on the tip. Needs to be about 22 millimeters long, 7/8 of an inch. So we're going to take your glue, or obviously with your PVA glue, a little tiny bit of glue, on your end of your wire, just a little tiny bit like that. And you're going to take your little ball of paste and then just going to roll that in. So you see the wire comes out the top here. And then we're going to use a little bit of corn flour on your fingers. And remember, you're going to roll this into a sausage. So it wants to be sort of tubular with a little point on the end. So just like the rosemary. So if you were making the rosemary leaves and lavender leaves, or the juniper to be pushed into the mold. All right, so then, and this wants to be, as I said, about 22 millimeters long. All right, so you're gonna, obviously this needs to be, so you just stretch it down here. And it wants to be about 22 millimeters, which is about 7/8 of an inch. So on your size guide, you know, this is 3/4 of an inch, this is an inch, this is 7/8 of an inch, which is about 22 millimeters. So just a little bit past the as I said, the 20. All right, so about 2 millimeters more, approximately. And don't get too stressed about this. And then what you're going to do is going to place it onto your soft side of your pad using your flexi scraper. So then we're going to place it on a soft sided pad, flatten with flexi scraper, then with shaft of companion tool, widen a little bit at the base. All right, so what you're going to do is to take your, just squash it like this. All right, so that sort of squashes it. And then you're going to use the shaft of your companion tool. Now, this thing to do is just sort of hold the wire. So you want to make it a little bit wider at the base. All right, so you're just going to make it a little bit wider at the base part here. All right, and then you're going to take your scissors. Now I'm going to use spring action scissors. Now I'm going to just make some little tiny cuts on here, just, you know, 1 or 2 cuts. You don't even have to do this on every one. All right, and then what we're going to do here, now we're going to do 2 rose hips where the calyx is going to come up, because a lot of rose hips you see are like this. All right, so that what that means is the wire is going to be curved up towards us, and then we're going to do one, I'm show you that, which the calyx is going to curl back. All right, so you can see the sort of that would be almost like the life cycle of it. It's sort of so it just makes it look a little bit interesting as well, that they're not all exactly the same. So what we're going to do is bend the wire up towards you and pinch like a taco shape. Continue making all 15, but the last 5 you will curl away from you. All right, so here, so what you do is you're going to bend the wire up. All right, so you're going to bend the wire up towards you, and you're going to pinch this like a taco shell. So you're just going to just pinch that, and that gives you your sort of your calyx. All right, because remember, this is going to have some brown and things on it, so it's going to look sort of like dried. Okay. So I'm going to show you that. I'll show you that again. All right, I'll show you this another 2 times, and I'll just show you the curved one. But just so you just roll that into a little ball. Then you're going to put the wire through there. Use a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers. Remember, going to roll this up. I'll do a little bit pointed. Then just going to stretch it down. So it wants to be about as I said, about 7/8 of an inch, all right, which is about 22 millimeters. So it's just past the 20 millimeters, or as I say, 7/8 of an inch, all right? So you can see that's about the length you want. And then you're going to put it onto the pad here. Just going to press that down. And all I want to do is just going to make it, because if you think of the shape of a calyx, just going to make it a little bit wider at the bottom. Now, if it's sort of a really weird shape, you can just take a pair of scissors and give it a quick little manicure, but don't worry too much about this. And then you're just going to just do, 1 or 2 cuts. This just helps to give sort of visual interest to the leaf, all right? And then you're going to bend the wire. So you hold the wire like this, and you bend the wire up towards you. And then, as I said, you're going to pinch this with your, like that. So it's almost like a sort of, it's going to be like a withered calyx, all right? So just going to show you one more of those, of that one. So we'd actually make 10 like that. So remember, put a little bit of glue, thread that through. But I found this is a really good way to make it because it's obviously going to give it a lot more strength because of having the wire through there. And you know, even with air drying clay and that, like obviously when you do very fine pieces, eventually it will dry out. It could get brittle. So about 22 millimeters, so just a little bit more on that. All right, and then place it on the pad. So soft side of the pad, just flexi scraper, just going to press it. And I found it was easier to, when you widen it, just so I'm gonna hold the wire like this and just going to roll a little bit like that. You see, so you're making like a leaf shape. So it's almost like a little bit like an Italian ruscus leaf, and but really tiny. And then you can just do a couple of little cuts as needed. All right, and then what we're going to do, we're going to bring this up. I'm going to pinch it like a taco, so you get that tubular shape. All right. So anyway, so you'd make 10 like that. All right. So we're going to make 10 of that that sort of shape where they curve up. And then once you've done that, you're going to make 5 where they're going to curve down. And obviously I had already made some. You can see they're a little bit lighter just because you know, when you mix the cream and green, but as I said, it doesn't matter because it's all going to be dusted over. So, but just use some of the leftover paste if you've got that from your. So here, the last one you're going to, last 5 you will do, so you do 10 curved up. Again, we're going to just make that, so about 22 millimeters. Press that on, just hold the wire. So the wire goes all the way to the end. And just cut fine little cuts. So then the last 5, rather than curving up, they're going to be curved back. You see? And then they're going to be, so these will be the 5 that are curling down. All right? So those are that. Now, what we're going to do is, of course, you will continue with making all of your, remember your 15. So 10 of them are going to be curling up, and then 5 of them will be curling down. Just so we get a little bit of a sort of an interest there in the piece. All right. Now then what we're going to do, we're not going to dry those, we're going to use them straight away. So as soon as you've made your pieces, all right, so you can group them. So you'd have obviously 2 groups of 5 curled up. So then what we're going to do is now tape 5 around the stamens using 1/4 width floral tape, bending at a slight angle with fine tweezers. All right, so you're going to take your tweezers. Now these are the ones that are going to be culling. So you're just going to use your tweezers, and they see they're going to just be bent at a slight angle here. So with your tweezers, you're going to just sort of take the tweezers, and with the tweezers to bend those, and then I'm going to take that. All right, and then what we're going to do is going to use some 1/4 width tape. So I've got 1/4 width floral tape. Remember, one it's sort of thinner, and then these are literally just going to sit right there at the base of the stamens. All right, so now this technique you could also use, for example, some of our members have asked about like sea holly, which is a sort of an unusual flower. It's a bit like a sort of a teasel in the middle that grow a lot by rivers, and then it's sort of a bluey color, and then it has the outside petals. You could make, as I said, the sea holly with this same type of technique for the outer petals. All right, so you see how I'm just sort of putting those on. So this is the calyx. And then this will be the last one here. And you're just going to tape down, and you're going to tape down till you get past the end of the wires, all right, and break off. You can just open this out a little bit, all right. So that will be so that you have 2 like this, all right, where the calyx is going that way. And then the last one you will do will be the one that's curling back. So again, you see the reason why we're using obviously fine wire. Now there are For example, some companies do sell 33 gauge wire, which is thinner obviously than 30 gauge. But as I said, most companies use the 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. But you can get 14 gauge wire, you can get 33 gauge wire. Okay, but I found 30 gauge is fine for this. All right, and then you're going to do exactly the same. So then you're going to take here. So just wrap around. But a lot of times we let things dry. You want these to be soft because we're going to manipulate them and we can bend them once we get the hip on, which is the sort of the red part, onto there. But you see it has a very nice natural look, and that's the last one. So they're just going to sit there. Just tape to the base of them, then just tape down here to the end of the wire, so where the white wire finishes. All right, and so that will give you so see you've got two where the wires curve up and one with the wire curved back. All right, just so it gives a nice natural sort of look to the rose hip. Now next step is going to be, we're going to move straight on. So this is something you would do from start to finish. All right, you could of course make the center and let it dry, or leave it until it doesn't have to dry, but leave it till later. But when you make the calyx, as soon as you make the calyx, then you would put them on. Now, like I had mine prepped, if you were making these and you had to suddenly do something, and as I said, you couldn't do these straight away. If you've made some of them, just put them in a little zip top bag, all right? Because then you can come back to them later on, several hours later, or even the next day, and they're still going to be soft. All right, so that's the next thing you're going to do is going to be the rose hip. So in your checklist, it says 10 grams or a number 12 small, this is for sugar, of red pre-colored paste, for example, flour paste, gum paste, flexi paste, or obviously you could take white and you could color the 10 grams or 12 small red, all right? But most companies make pre-colored paste, flour paste, gum paste, flexi paste, all right? So this is red, poppy red color. And then for air drying clay, you're just going to use the pre-colored number 12 small of red, all right? So just use the pre-colored hardy clay. And but again, if you didn't have that, you could use white hardy clay and color it red. So anyway, once you've made that, you're going to measure off 3 number 9 smalls. This is the size we're going to be using. So with your size guide, so this is going to be a number 9 small, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to make like a medium rose cone, and that would be like, so a number 9 small. All right, so you'd obviously have 3 of those. I'm going to show you 2 of these underneath a little pot. We're going to use the rose cone mold. So in your checklist, rose cone and thorns, we're going to be using a medium-sized cone. And then we're also going to use a measuring mold. Now, if you don't have one of these, don't worry, but this is a good way to almost support the shape of the cone, because we're going to hollow out the top of it, as you will see. And we'll show you this a couple of times. Now, you're going to use like a cookie scribe needle, a bamboo skewer. You could use something like, for example, also you could use a small stick. This comes with the, like, for example, these are my ones, but you can get these in white. It's just like called a small cell stick normally. So again, it's a bamboo skewer size, okay? But as I said, something sharp, because we're going to hold this like how you would. Now, of course, when we use the rose cone mold, normally we've got paste wire on the cone. Here we're going to just use why we're using the stick to form that into the shape. All right, so you're going to just condition the paste. All right, and then you can put it onto the skewer or onto a stick, and then you're going to make it into a basic cone shape. And we're just going to put this into the rose cone mold and rotate this around. So you see that holds it sort of still. So just sort of rotate that around in the cone mold. So that's going to give you the nice shape. You want to push a stick in about halfway in, because that will be when we hollow the top. Means when we thread the wire through, everything will come, the wire will come out the bottom. All right. If your wire feels like it's sticking a little bit, you can put a little bit, just put it in some vegetable fat, some shortening, but just going to rotate that around like so. All right. Then I'm going to take it off of there, and I'm going to put it into the number 3 cavity on my mold here. And this is on the measuring mold. This will just help to support it, and I found it works really well. And I'm going to use a stick. And again, if you don't have a stick like this, you can just use a wooden dowel, just I've shown on projects before. Use a pencil sharpener. All right. But you're going to put just a little bit of vegetable fat onto there, or in air drying clay, you can also use cold cream, Nivea cream as well. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work the top. So I'm going to hold the stick, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work out. So I'm just here, I'm rotating this around. That's why you need to have that. So you're making like a little bit like a volcano on the top. All right, so you see how you get this almost like a volcano shape on the top there, and that's going to give you the shape. And then you can take this out of here, and then you can use your, your cookie scribe needle, or as I said, a skewer, and it just goes through there, so that will come out the back. All right, so just sort of push something through there like that. But remember, you can put a little bit of fat on there. That will help to make that easy to do. All right, so you're just gonna, so you see you get the sort of the shape. So it's like a rose cone, but you've got this hollowed top to it. All right, now we're gonna take then now once you've done that, we're going to, next step, brush glue at the base of the calyx and 5 millimeters down. So taking your brush, so we're gonna brush the glue on the base of the calyx, so just right at the bottom of the calyx and about 5 millimeters down. Okay. Put that in a washcloth of things. And then you can take your, and this piece will just go through here. All right, and it's going to come up to meet like that. And you can use like a little mini palette knife or something just to push the paste up to the bottom, so that, because sometimes when you push it through, if the hole's not big enough, it sort of drags through there like that. All right, now at this point, you see, then you can take these calyxes are still soft, so you can just sort of obviously, you can have, for example, you can see like I've got 2 more closed up and 1 a little bit open there. But you're just going to pull that up, so that brings this up here. And just going to mold that around. And so you're just going to use your thumb and finger like a crab or a lobster, and you're just going to ensure that the red paste comes around the green. All right, so you'll get the sort of the shape of your rose hip. All right, now of course also remember on air drying clay, although air drying clay is soft, it dries quite quickly. The surface dries quite quickly. Remember also, like, this is flexi paste as well, so if you, same as air drying clay, you can also take a wet finger if you have any little areas. But the other thing to remember, this is going to be glazed. So glaze is going to cover any imperfections. So even if there's a little crack in here, it's not going to notice when it's finished. Because think of your hardwood floors, wooden floors, you could have scratches on, but if you put varnish over the top of it, they'll disappear. So always think of that when you're doing berries, because also when we move on to the berries, if you have any little imperfections, don't worry too much. But as I said, of course, on air drying clay and flexi paste, the advantage of there is you can use a wet finger if you need to on those. And that will give you your calyx, all right? So you're going to have your two calyxes like that. And you can, for example, like if you press that up a little bit more, you can make that more round, so as I showed you, the shape of the calyxes, but just going to use your little knife and just push that up to there like that, and then get you a rose hip, all right? I just found this gives a nice shape to the bottom rather than doing, for example, doing this freehand. All right, so I'm just going to show you that one again on the other one. So we're going to take your paste. So I'm just conditioning this. So remember, this is a 9 small. Just roll it into a ball. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of vegetable fat on my scribe needle. So just going to sort of hold this, and you rotate it, make it into a basic cone shape. You see how I'm holding the needle in the channel, and you can actually just rotate that. It gives you a rose. Now, sometimes I've had questions by Flower Pro Club members, but also general Flower Pro group. How do you make unwired roses? You know, like, so there are lots of ways you can do it. A lot of times I found it easier if you were going to do a rose on a cake to just make it as you would a wired rose, and then you just cut it off. So after the calyx is on, just cut it off. But the other thing to remember is you can also use toothpicks, you know, like for example, a lot of times if you had a bride who wanted like roses cascading down the cake, you could in fact just take a toothpick. These are Japanese, the Oriental style toothpicks with a carved end. Put some glue on the end of this, and into your air drying clay or into your sugar, you could put this in, and then you just rotate it in the mold, let it dry, build your rose. And that means then on a cake, if you were doing roses cascading down, you can actually just stick the toothpick directly into the cake as a food grade product. You can also use pasta as well. You can use you don't want to use spaghetti, it's not really quite thick enough. But like on my pine cones, I've used things like pasta, angel hair pasta, and spaghetti. But you can buy obviously thick pastas, different gauges of spaghetti. And also if you go to an Asian grocery store or supermarket, you can buy udon noodles and Japanese and Taiwanese and Vietnamese noodles that are thick like this. So again, you could cut that about 5 centimeters long, put some glue on there, and then put that into your cone. And again, you could either then detach the, you could take that off, cut the spaghetti or the pasta or noodle off, and then in theory that would make it totally edible. All right, so if you were putting it on, for example, a gâteau or petit gâteau or sort of entremet or some type of cake that's going to be eaten, that means you have a totally edible support system. Let's sort of, you know, talk, this is a good way to talk about it. But you see, you just rotate that on there, it rotates beautifully into the mold. All right, okay, and then I'm going to take that off, and then I'm going to put it into my here, and this just helps to support the weight of the, you know, sort of the shape. A little bit of vegetable fat shortening in here. Put this in the top, and you're going to push this in, and then you see I'm rotating that around, so you get this almost this sort of volcano shape. So just going to do that on the top, and then you'll get that shape there. So here you've got the shape, and then just like we did previously, just make sure there's a hole through the middle there. So obviously that's going to, so it's almost a bit like a balloon shape. You think of it about like an upside down balloon shape there. And then we take your center. So we're going to brush some glue. So just brush glue about 5 centimeters down. And then once you brush the glue down, you're going to slide this up the wire. All right, and you're just going to bring this up the wire like this. So that comes up to meet there. And remember, you can just use your little here, and then you're just going to use the fingers like the crab. So you see, you're just pinching around the top there. Now this one is going to be sort of more open, so you see how I'm going to then open this out. So again, you see how I've got some more of them, so they're a little bit more open. Okay. So you can see you've got the sort of the closed up one and a more an open one. So 2 closed up ones and 1 more open. And that's why, remember, these ones we bent in the opposite direction. But you know, because the paste is still thin, because obviously it's thin and it's got a wire, you see you can still manipulate this. I mean, so this is still easy to manipulate into the size we need. So I've got a little fly has joined me. Okay, he's watching me make rose hips. So there we have the, as I said, the rose hips. Now these will be dry. We're just going to leave these till part 2, and in part 2 we're going to obviously color these and obviously bring them to life. So now we're going to move on to berries. Now we're going to do 2 types of berries, just a simple berry and then one done in the U mold from the winter foliage. Now for the simple berries, it says take 3 28 gauge full length wires, green or white, cover with quarter width brown floral tape. So what we're going to do is very much like we just did for the rose hip for the calyx part, but we're going to actually cover the wires before we do that. Just going to stretch your, and then you're going to cover the wire down with brown, because it's much easier when doing things like this to do this before you. So this is 28 gauge, and I said it can be green or white wire. I'm covering it with quarter width brown tape. Okay. So we can, now usually like when you sometimes at the end you'll get like a little rough part of the end, so a lot of times I would just cut that off. All right, that little tiny end piece. That means you get sort of a nice clean start. All right, so we're going to do, so cut each in half, then each half into thirds. Okay, so what we're going to do, you're going to take your, so we're going to cut the wire in half, and then each half we will cut into thirds. So that's going to give us 18 wires. All right, so again, we're going to have a couple of extra wires here because we're going to do 16 berries, so we'll have 2 wires over. All right, so anyway, those are your wires. Once we've got the wires done, we're going to make a small 4mm 1/8 of an inch closed hook using pliers and squash. So I'm going to use a pair of pliers, and you can usually do, you know, about 3 at a time. But these want to be, as I said, about 4mm, all right, or about 1/8 of an inch. They're quite tiny, all right, because that's, obviously that is the 1/8 of an inch where the H is, the C and H join, that's the length, all right, so quite small. So just going to make the, so fold that over, and I'm going to squash those, because this is going to go through making a little seed in the top. When we make these berries, you see the inside, a little bit like the yew berry has that little brown, so that looks like the brown seed in the middle of the berry. So because these are going to be pulled into the berry, not pushed in from the bottom, you need to have these, as I said, cut quite small, and hook those on the end. Now, of course, pliers vary a little bit, but it's almost about the sort of width of my pliers, okay? So I'm just going to go over the top. If they're a little bit long, don't worry, but as long as they're squashed like this. But they're small. All right, so then you're just going to, so you continue with obviously all the 18 of those. So you've got the wires ready. Now, next we're going to, in our checklist there, we want to, we need 10 grams or a number 12 small. So the same amount as we used for the, before when we did the rose hip for the cream and green. And this is going to be, you can use, started with red, and then you can add a little bit of burgundy, like, you know, burgundy or a claret, like in England, like the Sugar Flare brand is claret, is a sort of basically a fortified wine. So like a burgundy wine color. So basically burgundy added to red, and you will get this. So this is 10 grams or 12 small of red. So again, you can just use the same pre-colored paste you use for your, for obviously the rose hip. And you see I'm just making that a sort of a burgundy color. So you can see it's quite sort of more of like a blood red color, okay? And of course, these berries can be made in any color. You can make them in purple, you can make them in black, all sorts of color combinations, you know, depending, you can use these all the year round. But when we think of autumn time, and plus I'm thinking of obviously an arrangement of all of the colors we're making, all the projects, we're adding some different colors, because this is sort of a different shade or level than the, say, dahlia, so you don't want to have everything matching, all right? So I've got this color here. So anyway, that's a 10 grams or a 12 small red, and I've just added some burgundy to it. Now, when you're doing your air drying clay, with the air drying clay, you're going to use a custom color from the burgundy, which is a number 1 white, number 5 magenta, number 7 yellow, 7 orange, 7 blue combined together. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your measuring mold. So we're going to use the measuring mold here, and you're going to do this custom burgundy color, which is there. So number 1 white, number 2 magenta, then number 5 yellow, and number 5 blue. Now, when you mix that together, that will give you the same sort of color as I'm going to use in paste. This is going to be bigger than we need, so then measure off obviously a 12 small of that, all right? And that will be comparable to the size we're going to make. So anyway, that's in air drying clay or in sugar. So we're going to take your paste. Again, you know, when you're doing multiples of things like this, it's best to condition the whole piece of paste. But also if you're working in traditional flour paste, gum paste, if when you make the berries, when you get to the last few, if they still feel a little bit dry, of course you can totally just work a little bit of vegetable fat into each one as you do it. So here we're going to roll this into a sausage. Remember, this is a 10 grams or a 12 small. We're using the whole of that amount. All right, so roll that in. Again, you can use your flexi scraper if you need to. It's going to give you that even length. All right, and then this is going to be, once we've done that, we're going to roll into sausage, cut into quarters, and each quarter into 4, giving you 16 berries. So here, again, don't worry, they vary a little bit. All right, and then you're going to cut these each quarter into 4. So just like we did, a bigger scale of how we did the calyx. All right. And then of course you do the same on the other, and then you're just going to put those under a container. Okay. Now we're going to use an umbrella tool, all right? This is a Sugarcraft tool, and I will show you also, if you don't have an umbrella tool, how you can do this, all right? But I'm going to use an umbrella tool, and I'm going to just brush a little bit of vegetable fat onto the top of this, and just wash that with a little bit of soap afterwards, okay? You can do this on your pad or on the table, but what you're going to do is roll it into a ball, okay? And then all you're going to do is just going to take the umbrella tool and push it in the top and take it off. So it's going to give you this little 5-point star, okay? Then you take a little bit of glue. With a little bit of glue, you're going to brush glue basically all on the sort of on the hook length, okay? And then that's going to come down through the center, and you pull it until the hook just disappears into the inside. So you're going to get this little tiny seed in the inside. Now with these, if you stood them up, all right, if you put them in styrofoam block or a foam block, the weight of them, they can slide down the wire. So all I do is I just use a piece of convoluted crepe foam, and you just turn these upside down like little cherries, all right? And that's sort of how they dry. And of course, if you're in a hurry, you could put this in a food dehydrator. We're not going to need these until the next part, so we just let them dry for a few hours, and then you can, and I'll show you that again, all right? So you roll that into a ball. But if you find your paste starts to get a little, especially with traditional flour paste, gum paste, that's going to dry quickly, you can just obviously condition the paste as you work with each piece. But don't worry about any little slight cracks or imperfections, because these will be glazed as well, all right? And then again, you're going to use your umbrella tool. Now, several companies do the umbrella tool. This is an FMM one, which is, as I said, the Dresden tool I use. I just like the shape of it. But, Gem Cutters, PME, many companies do that. But if you're buying an umbrella tool, some of them have 5 fins on the end. Like the Gem one has got 2. One end has got 5 ridges and one end has got 6, all right? For the berries, I usually use the 5-ended one, and the FMM one only has a 5. Okay, and then you're just going to put a little bit more. So just brush your glue about 5 millimeters down there. So it's secured. And then you're going to bring that in, and you're just going to put that little seed in the center. And as I said, you're just going to turn those upside down onto your convoluted foam. All right. And of course, once you've got the 16 of them done, so they look like little cherries. All right. But this, as I said, is just a simple berry, and just showing you that. And I want to just show you, if you don't have a umbrella tool. So all you do there is is you'll take your little ball of paste. You know, using a stick or, as I said, a wooden dowel, what you do is you just would make a little hollow in the top, and then all you would then do is taking your umbrella tool, your companion tool, you just make 5 little lines, 4, 5, like that. Okay, and you just make exactly the same shape there. Then you put your glue on. So it's just there's sometimes things we use is going to save a little bit of time. Thread the wire through there, pull that through. And you can see why the hook doesn't want to be too big, because if the hook was too wide, it's going to sort of mess up that shape. So you just turn that upside down and you just will let those dry. So those are our basic berries. Now, remember, we've got 16 little balls of paste, all right, and we have 18 wires. So you'll have 2 wires over, all right? And as I said, that will be how you make the little berries. Because I'm basing this on, we're going to have a branch, and I'm going to use 16 in 3 different groupings. So moving on to the next berries, we're going to be doing, as I said, a little bit like a canthus berry. So we're going to use the same technique we use for the instructions. It says wire as a simple berry, but use a 30 gauge wire. Because these berries we're going to do in orange, we want them on a slightly softer wire, because we're going to get them, these are going to sort of hang in clusters. So I'm using a slightly softer wire. So this is 30 gauge wire, so exactly the same. You're going to take 3 in your checklist, 3 30 gauge white or green wires, cover them with quarter width tape, and then cut each of them into 6. Now the only difference is the hooks will be slightly bigger, because we're going to do this in a mold. And so we're going to use the hooks, be about the same sort of length, but they're going to just be a little bit more like a shepherd's crook shape. Okay, so they're just more of a traditional hook, all right, like this. So we're going to just take your, because we're going to be pushing this into the U mold. Now, of course, when I showed the U berries in book, obviously number 4, I used the little tiny floral tape bar, which you could also do that like this. This is a little quicker for production work. Okay. Now, in your checklist, as far as the paste goes, we have we need 10 grams of or 12 small of tangerine. So use equal amounts of yellow and orange from the Chinese lantern and autumn cosmos. So again, we're going to recycle leftover paste. So that would actually be 5 grams of each, which is a number 9 size. All right. So basically, you just need a number 9 of obviously the orange and the orange and the yellow from the Chinese lantern and from the fall cosmos, and you're going to mix these together. And this is going to just make a sort of a paler, like almost a tangerine color. Okay, this color here. Now just mix this together. Air drying clay, you would use a number 9 of yellow and a number 9 of orange, air drying clay. Remember, with your air drying clay, or when you're using, as I said, like this is flexi paste, you can just add water to this as well, and that would soften it down. Because again, when you've been working with paste, I mean, this paste was used obviously for other projects, she's rolled out, it's going to start to toughen a little bit. Now remember, traditional, when you're working with traditional flour paste or gum paste, you can do that with a little egg white. So you can add a little egg, which I've shown in a lot of the videos with pipette or the paintbrush, and you can just add a little bit of water. But air drying clay or the flexi paste, you can just literally add water to that. And you see it's going to make a sort of a tangerine color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, once you've mixed this up, now this is a little bit different. We're going to use the size guide and measure off our paste. So we've got our paste here. So we're going to, for these, we're going to measure 7 number 6 small. So you're going to use a number 6 small size ball of paste. That's going to be a number 6 that just goes through the hole. All right, so this will be a number 6 that just goes through the hole. And then, of course, you're going to measure another 6 balls of paste the same size and put those underneath a little pot. And then your large ones we're going to measure off. So those are going to be 9 number 6 this will be in number 9 6 size. All right, so just regular size number 6. Okay, so about a third below, 2/3 above. All right, so you've got, as I said, 7 6 small, and then 9 number 6 regular. Okay, and that will be the paste ready. So make into a sausage press into a small U berry mold on the winter foliage. brush or dip glue, hook in glue, and then insert and flex the mold. So we're going to use obviously the U mold now. So from here for the U, so we're using as I said, what we'd use for the U berries. And this we're using a little bit differently because we're not opening it up like a cup, but it just gives this nice sort of shape to the berry, and you get this little ring on the top of it. Okay, so again, just showing you another thing you can do with the U berry mold. Now, so we're going to take your number 6. Now these ones, what I would do is I would just condition them, each one you make it into a little sausage, roll it into a little tiny sausage shape. All right, and then you're going to put this into the mold. Now it's the one here, all right, so this is the cavity we're using. It's the one that's got like a little, like a ring donut or bagel shape on it, and this is the big one here, all right. So so that 6 small will actually fill the mold level. Gonna put, as I said, you can either brush the glue on the hook, or you can dip it in there, insert the wire in, all right, and then we're going to flex the mold. So flex it one way, flex it the other way, so a couple of times, flex, just almost open out the mold, and that will and then what we're going to do here is going to use your thumb and first finger, just going to mold this around. Now, so remember, you're holding your thumb and your first finger in like a V shape, and you see that's like the shape we do a cone, and then with my other thumb and finger, I'm just rotating this around like that, so you get this nice shape at the back of it. Now these I'm going to put in a little block of styrofoam or foam. Remember, I've got little cocktail straws in here, and so that means because this wire is fairly soft, then you can just put those into the little straws. Alternatively, you can actually, if you have like a couple of pieces of crate foam, and these don't take long to dry, and of course you might be doing these at different times on a different day, but you know, once these have dried for a couple of hours, you can just take these off of there, and you can also you could use and just lay it into there like that to support that. Okay, so that's the small one. Now then, the large one is going to be, now remember, this isn't going to completely fill the mold this time, but we're using a larger cavity now for here. And then again, just roll it into a sausage. Gonna push that into the mold. Just push that in with your finger, okay? Now when we do, of course, a floral tape bud, like if you watch the video, I made a hollow with this, all right? But the thing is, if you press in with your finger, now if you've got long fingernails and you can't do that, we'll make a slit in there. What you can do is you can use a bigger ball, like a ball tool, or if you could use a stick as well, but usually just your finger will just help to get the paste into there. And that will give you the definition on here. Again, put some glue on there, and then I'm going to push the wire in. Now, the other thing is the wire, because of course you want to get, so the straight part of the wire is really in the middle of the berry, all right? So it just disappears. And again, you can flex, and you can flex like 3 times, 4 times, and then you can just open up the mold. See, if you open up the mold, it releases the berry without any problems. And just like I spoke about on the rose hip and on the other berry, you know, if you have any little imperfections, you could, of course, use a wet finger on air drying clay or on a flexi paste. But the thing is, you don't worry about that because these will be glazed, all right? And that will be your bigger berry. So those are your 2 sizes of your berry. So we're making 7 of the small berries, and we're making 9 of the larger berries. So just to recap on part 1 of berries and rose hips. So we made 3 rose hips, so 3 thread centers, then 15 obviously calyxes. 5 of them are going to curve down, and 10 of them will curve up. And then we taped those onto the stamens and made the hips, all right? And then we moved on to the berries. So these are going to be the berries. So this is the basic berry, so 16 of those. And then we have 7 small and 9 basically U berries done in the winter foliage mold. So those will be needed to be completed. In the second part, obviously, the rose hips will be, of course, dusted and glazed and being brought to life, put in a nice branch. And of course, the berries again are going to be dusted and glazed. So I hope you've enjoyed this first part of rose hips and berries. And we'll have a lot of fun making these and using them in different color combinations and on different cakes throughout the year, because all of these things can be used not only just in autumn time. And so until part 2, sweet wishes, see you soon, bye.